Welcome to episode 433 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and he's Levon, a.k.a. Barcelona. And as a host of a Barcelona podcast, I always look forward to, it must be said, to the Real Betis matches, because it always, almost always at least, means goals, and it always does mean a lot to talk about. So, Levon, I know there are a lot of Culers that also like to watch Betis. I think that's something true throughout Spain. But for you, I don't want to make any assumptions that you like watching other La Liga teams, but are there any, and are you enjoying, or do you enjoy to watch Betis as well?
I think, like most people, and I'm certainly among them, sympathize with Betis not only for their style, but also for what the club represents. So, for those who don't know, there are two main clubs in Sevilla, and one is like the middle class, represents the middle class, Sevilla. And the other one represents the working class, and that's Real Betis. And even though those lines have gotten muddied over time, of course, Betis is an enormous club with a huge amount of fans all over Spain, particularly in Catalonia. So when Franco won the Civil War, he actually gave a lot of money to make sure that Barcelona had a really strong economy, and that also meant that Barcelona needed cheap labor, which meant that a lot of immigrants from Andalusia migrated to Barcelona. So Barcelona is full of Betis fans. One of whom is Hector Bellerin,
right?
Who came up through our academy, but is the son of Andalusian immigrants, and is a Betis fan, which is why it was so special that he helped Betis win the Copa
Right.
last season. So already organically, like that there are some links between Catalonia and Betis, because of the migration of Betis fans to Barcelona. Also, I think that the stadium is probably one of the. I've never been, but it seems to me one of the maybe 10 best stadiums in Europe.
It's one of those you can hear through the TV. That's for certain. Yeah, that's for certain. And I must say about Bellerin too, that maybe he went to Sporting CP because he wants to continue to wear green and white. But yes, Bellerin, it must be said too, will get also honored in some way. But I don't know if you get a ring or whatever you get, but you get some kind of congratulations for being part of the Barca squad that eventually potentially will win the Liga or whatever other cups that they win at the end. But we're not here to talk about Bellerin. We are here to talk about the 2-1 win for Barcelona over Real Betis. So I think we start. It's interesting though, because I think we start with one of two players here. We either start with Raphinha or we start with Balde. And I'm gonna just have to say, let's start young to old, and we'll start with Balde here because he was voted as the Liga man of the match. Raphinha, he was man of the match in other places. But for Balde, just by the numbers tonight, what you saw and the numbers support each other in this case, created 3 chances, more than any other player on the field tonight, and a personal record in his La Liga career. He completed 4 dribbles tonight, joint among any other Barcelona players, along with Pedri, and also a personal record in his La Liga career. He has 4 assists for Barca on the season in the league. Only Dembele has more with 5. And, for me, most impressively, though, and I said it in the 5 headlines, that for Balde, this is what makes watching young players exciting. I've been talking about with Pedri in recent weeks and Xavi, but those little changes, those little things that they learn, and you're watching it in real time, right? It's difficult when you have a player like Christensen who seems fully formed, and we can kind of watch how he adapts, and we can complement the ways in which he gets and figures things out at Barcelona, which is different than Balde, who seems to be, for me, today, I think I was most impressed that, again, those little decisions, you can see the gears moving, that when he was younger in the academy, he could go with that first step, with that pace, he could go wherever he wanted. He could go out wide, he could come inside, nobody could stop him, basically under 16, cadet A and down, because he kept then, as I keep always saying, he did skip levels because he was always like 2 levels up from his age group. Gets to Barcelona B, and does have trouble because now for the first time ever, he's got big, strong physiques to deal with, and they can figure out how to kind of force him in one direction. But now you look at what is 4 months or 5 months of him in the Liga, and you can see that he's starting to figure out more and more, okay, before I get the ball, let me anticipate where my defender is positioned. It's going to be better for me to come inside first, or it'll be better for me to go or stay outside and go outside. And you're seeing that he's anticipating so much better, and his decision making is getting better. And the quality of his final ball, something that may come with time. I mean, I do, again, crossing, we talk about it, but his assists are already there. So that final ball, I think, will continue to even improve. But I've just been so excited to see how the maturization of his understanding of what he needs to do next, and how his pace allows him, and just how dangerous he can be when he combines his pace with the proper decisions. I've been really impressed by Balde, and I think I can argue him being man of the match today, certainly with what you ask of a left back and what that kind of left back performance provided you.
My man of the match would have been Busquets.
Which is fair too. But I have him on my list as somebody that we need to talk about in a positive way. Yep.
Because he was incredible. I do need to offer up a caveat before we continue with this podcast. I finished work at 5 to 10, 7 to 9. The match started at 9, and I scrambled to find a bar that showed the match. Tebas has raised the prices, so a lot of bars are not showing football anymore, which is a damn shame. Because one of the nice things about Spain is that you cannot walk 20 meters or 20 yards without finding a bar that shows La Liga. And that has changed because it has become too expensive for them to show the matches. I finally found one, but the match was on. I could see that nice green on the TV from far away. So I was like, okay, that's the one. After like 5 bars that didn't show it, that's the one. I went in, and it turned out that the barman was streaming the match from his phone, casting it onto the TV. And that effing stream got stuck and froze every 45 seconds.
But that must be great. That must be great Balde, because of his pace. You see him in one spot, it freezes. 4 seconds later, he's all the way up the field because he can go 60 yards in like 3 seconds. But I guess it wasn't that notable. Yeah.
I'm not ready for that joke just yet because I was so frustrated.
Yeah.
Obviously, I stayed to watch the first 45 minutes, and then I took the subway home, where I am fortunate enough to have a subscription to La Liga at home, and I was able to. I can watch the match I have like one of those things on my TV where if the match was 2 hours ago, I can just put it on now.
Yeah.
So I watched the second half when I got home. Not being able to judge the first half, for me, Busquets was the man in the match. I agree with you on Balde's decision making, on him to figure out where the least resistance is for his runs. I wonder how many assists did he have in Barça B last season?
How many assists? Well, you have to give me a second on that to get that exact number. But he didn't also play that often. Remember, he had injuries all of last season with Barça B with a shoulder injury. So, yeah, let's check it out. But
I mean, I don't remember him giving anything close to an assist whenever I watched a game of him in Barça B, because his decision making was so horrible. He was physically he was faster than anybody on the pitch. He would dribble past players, and then when he would get anywhere near the opponent's box, I don't know, he would just pump the ball into a black hole of darkness and nothingness.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is 1. It's 1 assist in 15 matches in the third division. And again, a reminder too that the reason why I was so skeptical for him being promoted directly to the first team at the start of the year was only because of Barça B. The player he is now in the first team is who he was projected to be for 4 or 5 seasons. And then he, for 2 years, just kept getting hurt, and he didn't adapt well to Barça B. And usually when you look at Albert Ruiz or Juan Miranda, there are other players that they get to Barça B and it's like, it's not entirely working out. It's not, it doesn't, they don't look like they're going to be up to that level. And that's what it felt with Balde. And I was worried about him, but yeah, he's completely fit. And I think Christensen, actually, by the way, I actually think he's been even better. He's matured, yes, but I think with Christensen as the left center back, he's so much more covered with him there than he was with Piqué or Eric Garcia or Alonso. And Christensen defensively, just his positioning is better than the other 3 at this point in the season. Yeah. So I think that cover has also been helpful to Balde's progression, even defensively.
Also, Christensen is deceptively fast.
He is. He reacted. There was a moment in the second half because you notice that he was the one when that was being Barca kind of defending for their lives. He's the one that stepped forward and reacted because he's the one who has the quickness to get to that man. Well, when the midfielder is coming up, he's the one who stepped out to it, which is really interesting. He wouldn't do it if he didn't have the speed to do it.
Also, at one point, there was a counter where there was they went 4-on-2 against us. And it's just hilarious because, you see the white boy of the defense running back so fast. I'm like, whoa, look at Christensen. It's so hilarious. So, but I'm extremely excited that this is happening for Balde. Like you said, players have the projection, but you forget that when they're in their youth, they are actually competing with people with a talent pool that is very limited, because it's only one generation and a very narrow generation.
And also regional too. It has to be from Spain because you can't get these international talents till they're 18 years old.
And regional, but still Spain is a big enough country.
True.
But then they go to Barça B, and all of a sudden they compete with professionals anywhere between 16 and 36 years old.
Yeah.
So that's already a large talent pool, and obviously from Barça B to the next level, where you compete with the cream of the crop. So it's just astounding that Balde has made that step, and not only does not look out of place, but often looks like our best left back right now.
Yeah,
and it's very difficult to understand. I know there's people who say I always believed in Balde. Yeah, that's partly because you did not watch his games when he was in Barça B. Because everybody who actually watched some of his games came to the same conclusion. This kid will probably become a professional footballer somewhere, but definitely not at Barcelona.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's just a blessing.
Yeah. So speaking of blessings, let's move to the midfield here, because I think since the last time you were on, even but being Barcelona and Xavi, we've seen them move for, how are those four midfielders going to go on? And, it took 3 weeks for Xavi to now say, my Gala 11 is Busquets and De Jong in those two positions, and then Gabi as an inside forward on the left and Pedri on the right. And so you could criticize Pedri for having, I call him as a ghost hat trick today, where if not for Rui Silva having some pretty good saves, Pedri would have again been on the score sheet for what had been the fourth time in 6 games, which would have been cool, but he has to stick with 3 and 6. But as you mentioned too, I think tonight was interesting because these are exactly the kind of games, it was against conventional wisdom. These are exactly the kind of games you expect the young to be really, really special and really great in, using the dribbling through the middle where there was some space that Real Betis was giving up. And you expected that what we were seeing from De Jong basically for the last month, where he's been really good, we expected that today. But instead, and also with the game being much more up and down, that's the one you expect Busquets to struggle a little more in. But I agreed with your points too, and why we bring that up is that this midfield is now constructed where you can have De Jong having maybe his worst match, arguably, in again, a few weeks. That's not disparaging his last few weeks. I'm saying he's been really good. So for him to kind of be off it a little bit, he was dribbled past a few too many times for my liking tonight. His positioning wasn't great. He wasn't super helpful in the attacking sense. But Busquets was fantastic tonight. Again, which is against conventional wisdom against Real Betis, but which is ironic too, because Busquets, by the way, has only scored more than one goal at one stadium in Spain, and it's down in Seville. Against Real Betis on the road is the only place Busquets has scored more than one goal. So again, maybe it's just Busquets against Real Betis. But again, the idea of the tactics of the game being up and down doesn't fit Busquets. But he was, as you said, phenomenal. And I think for even De Jong, as bad as he was, as I felt like, when I say, I use quotes, as bad as I felt like he was, he had that misplayed ball in the 43rd minute, summed it up. It was this long ball through the middle that just went to nobody, and it felt like De Jong didn't have it. But that 73rd minute counter that I think is going to start to go through the cycle on Twitter, going viral, when Luis Enrique was coming down the right wing, and De Jong didn't step to him. He just kind of gave him space, waited. Busquets makes this long 60-yard sprint all the way back. And instead of De Jong ever stepping, he just continued to close down that angle, waits for Busquets to get back to it, and then Enrique kind of runs out of options and plays the ball. It was supposed to be a through ball, but it just goes out of play. And that sums up kind of what I've waited for so long, is that Busquets and De Jong have figured out that understanding of where they need to be and can tandem with one another. And again, we're seeing Pedri's heat map. It felt like he was a center forward, or not center forward, but it felt like he was a secondary striker. It felt like he was an attacking midfielder at times, but no, he was still the right interior. He was still the one who connected the numerical overloads on the left to Raphinha on the right, and he was getting in shooting positions as well. So I cannot be happier with the way this midfield four is constructed. And I do want to tout my own horn a little bit. I go all the way back to the YouTube video I made when Xavi was leaving Al Sadd and had signed to Barcelona. And I told you, here's what Xavi, some of his ideas were. And in a perfect world, he has these two more defensive midfielders, if you will, to control the game in a certain way. And he has his two high interiors doing it in this way. And I said, like, the press was the most important part of that. But in build-up now, they're figuring it out. And the fact that they passed, by the way, 70 more attempted passes today than against Girona tells you that this midfield continues to figure out how to horizontally move the ball and wear down opponents with or without Dembele, which I think is actually the brightest sign.
Yeah, it's actually crazy that it took 4 seasons for somebody to figure out how to get the best out of Busquets and Frenkie de Jong together.
Yeah.
And, now that you see them play, they're so complementary. And then, of course, you have Pedri in front of them. I still don't know if you absolutely need Xavi on that left side, or if Ansu would be able to do some of that as well. Because Ansu can also drop back. Ansu can also combine. But 6 months ago, we were trying to sell De Jong. Thank God we didn't. I think even I was in favor of selling him. And, people continue to trash Sergio Busquets. But we pretty much have to renew him, even if it weren't only because of our financial situation. You would want to keep him at least one more season.
To the point on that, like I've said about Zubimendi, like I'm not totally sold. I think even another year Busquets does that, but of course in the long run, and by long run I mean even next season, you want to start to being able to rotate him and figure it out. And I guess not say the new name, but the name that I've watched now twice that I've been a little more impressed with what he can do is Alan Varela of Boca Juniors. So I think as far, again, when you got to be, especially in this time, you're not even saying the replacing Busquets. And I think what I like about this midfield four is now you get to say, you're not replacing Busquets. You're replacing that other midfielder. So you need a profile that doesn't necessarily, we're not Busquets. It's that if you're looking for this controller type midfield or the pivot midfielder that doesn't have the weight of a 4-3-3 pivot job that, again, I think only Busquets could have done and did at such a level that he did. But now you're looking for that midfield is going to profile to partner well with Frenkie de Jong. And that's why I say Varela, I watch him and I go, okay, I can see what he does at Boca Juniors. I can see the decisions he makes, the speed of his decision making, the way he has long legs. It just physically even. There are comparisons, and so I make those comparisons and I go with that name. But yeah, if that player isn't available and you don't have the money for him, I think at this point, yeah, you say you renew Busquets because he's kind of earned his way back from, what was, the first 2 months of the season, 2.5 months of the season, and he's figured all that and figured that all back out. Now let's move forward a little bit with from the midfield to the two attackers in Lewandowski and Raphinha. And regardless of who we start with, I think the thing is the same, where people, and looking at the comments, wherever you go, Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and Twitter, wherever we go, it seems that people are frustrated with Raphinha. He's not giving you enough. People have been frustrated with Lewandowski in this match in particular, which I kind of agreed with. He didn't really come alive until the 73rd minute. Finally saw a little bit of life from him. And then he gets the second goal anyway, and it happens his way. And he's still leading the Liga by 3 goals over everybody else. He's got 14. Next closest is 11. So he still gets his goal. But even Raphinha, he has 4 goals and 6 assists in his last 15 Barcelona games. 10 goal contributions are at least 4 more than any other player in Barca's last 15 games. It's helpful that Lewandowski was suspended for 3 of those games. So Lewandowski's goal contributions are in 7 games as opposed to or in 12 instead of the 15. But again, it looks like Raphinha, he's not doing what he's supposed to. It looks like he's making mistakes. It looks like he's not helping the attack. And yet, he's come up with assists. He's come up with goals. And other than the end product, that's like the thing, same with Ferran Torres that we argue about too, with Raphinha, with Lewandowski. If their job is to make goals and assists happen. And as long as the numbers are happening at the end of the day, like, how critical are we going to be of how many times it looks like Raphinha was foiled, or how many passes of Pedri's did he mismanage today? Like, how many times did Pedri put him in to run onto the ball and continue to push forward, and he would slow up, or the tempo wasn't right, or he would just so left-footed. He was so left-footed and so stuck on his left foot that, I mean, defenders just kind of figured it out, and he seemed to struggle at times, and yet he's still finding ways to make a good impact.
I didn't watch the first half. My impression of the first half, I mean, I watched the first half on such a bad stream that I feel as if I didn't see the first half.
Sorry.
My impression of the first half was that we were terrible. But the second half, I thought Raphinha was very active. And maybe not everything worked, but I do feel that he never gave up. He tried to take players on. He was often a threat when he received the ball. He either received the ball in the right places, or he had the right intention to receive the ball in the right places, and he got a really important goal. Maybe what Raphinha needs, besides what he really needs, is what he has right now. Dembele injured, so he's going to get a good run of games. But I think what he also needs is a golazo or two. And I don't mean a tap in, but I mean
basically like the one he had in preseason against Real Madrid in El Clasico,
the
one in Miami.
Yeah. Or some of the goals that he scored when he was in Leeds, to boost his confidence. And I don't see why it would not happen, because he is a fighter. I think being a fighter and being comfortable, knowing that you are not the best right forward at the club, are not the same things. But now that he has Dembele out of the way, I can imagine him looking at himself, knowing that he's more talented than Ferran Torres when it comes to raw talent, and also when it comes to physically, like he's faster, which means that he's faster and he's more fit stamina wise. So his pressing is really, really good. So that should give him the confidence to really fight for staying at the club, because I think that the players, they're not completely stupid. They know that the club is in a very difficult situation this summer, and they know that players will be sold this summer in order to maybe even in order to renew people, or in order to make one signing.
Yeah.
So I do think that Raphinha knows, hey, if the club asks him to go back to the Premier League and bring in some money, that might be a possibility. I think Ferran knows it too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for both of them, people question like, oh, they quote unquote weren't punished for bad performances, but I don't think that's true at all. I mean, Raphinha was benched, like he was put on the bench and he was made to wait. And this is really the first time, as you mentioned, these next 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks without Dembele are the first time that you're going to see Raphinha on the right regularly with Lewandowski in the middle. I mean, hopefully he's healthy and not suspended. So Lewandowski in the middle, Raphinha on the right, without Dembele on the left. So this is going to be the first time we're going to see a run of form of games where Raphinha is given the responsibility of being that game-breaking right winger with Lewandowski as the focal point in the middle. Because we saw in the first half that pass that he gives, the nutmeg on Carvalho that winds up Pedri kind of dribbled right into Rui Silva, that first opportunity. It was a fantastic pass by Raphinha. And when Lewandowski is in the 11 and it's not Dembele out on the left, continuing to spread, and add width there, you do have a little more space for Raphinha to drop into right at the top of that 18 where he's comfortable to invert into. And by giving Raphinha space, like, that's truly what he needs. And Lewandowski creates more of that than Ansu did because he attracts a second defender. And especially, again, when you don't have a left winger that you're also trying to facilitate in Dembele, and it's just Balde out there. So, so for Raphinha, I'm willing to be patient. certainly with him, and we're going to see how these next 4 or 5 weeks work. With Ferran Torres and Ansu Fati, also, there are moments for them that they're going to have going forward. And then for Lewandowski, I kind of had quoted you earlier, was it last week or early in the week, whatever it was, about the idea about Lewandowski and what we've been seeing him since the World Cup and getting back from the World Cup. And so I want to hear that again from you because, yeah, I mean, as you mentioned in the first half, I think there were good spots. Like, as I said, Busquets' numbers for the whole game, just to give it to you here, 86% accurate long balls, 83% on his ground duels, most tackles in the game, most duels won, 8 recoveries. Busquets was fantastic from whistle to whistle, but the Barcelona attack was a bit sputtering. Like, there were moments, there was an offside there again for Pedri. There were moments, but it wasn't all put together. And for Barcelona, 0-0 first half shots on target was the first time in the first half of a game for the second time this season where they failed to register a shot on target. There, I finally got there.
Okay.
The other one was Bayern Munich in the Champions League, which again, we forget that one. So this is the first time in the Liga that they did not register a shot on target in the first half of a game. So yeah, the first half attack was sputtering. Lewandowski was a part of that. His first touch is just like, you don't know. And then again, he still gets the goal. And I don't know if this is just the Lewandowski you're going to get, where he's not going to just be like, oh, Lewandowski's gone superhuman robot mode. Instead, he's just going to score goals because that's what he does. That's still what he can do. And it's not going to be like he's going to take over a game.
I want the Lewandowski from before the World Cup back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that Lewandowski played like a 25-year-old Lewandowski. So I'm happy that the 48-year-old Lewandowski still gets goals. But I want the 25-year-old Lewandowski.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's see what happens here, because there's a clear difference between how he plays now and how he played 2 months ago. And it's hard to explain why there would be such a difference. Of course, players go through ups and downs, but I hope, and to be fair, it's extremely good that even during his downs, he is still scoring goals for us.
Mm-hmm.
But you see miscontrols, you see passes that he gets where he could convert the pass into a shot, and he doesn't even get his shot off, or he misses the ball almost. And yeah, it would obviously be a lot better for us if we get the Lewandowski back that was at the club for the first 3 months, because that Lewandowski is superstar, top 3 strikers in the world, Lewandowski.
Yeah, I mean, that is a Lewandowski that got Barcelona results before they had figured out their defensive solidity. Now that Araujo is healthy and back, I mean, and Koundé probably made, I mean, I could go and take a hot take here that my prediction is that own goal today by Koundé might be the worst mistake he'll make this season for Barcelona. And that one might even be one of the worst, even for how many years he stays. That might be one of the worst ones he had. It's just bounce up on him, miscontrol, it happens.
That was one of the most terrible own goals that I have ever seen.
I know, right? It was like, I was reading up the headlines, and I was like,
dude, not even I.
Yeah. That one's rough. Like, I had wrote in it, I wrote in it that like Balde was going to be the defender to talk about. Christensen was, unfortunately, I never can talk about Christensen, but I also never have anything bad to say. So it's just, I always say he was good again, and that's Christensen. But for Koundé, I thought he was covering for Araujo. Actually, believe it or not, I don't have the stats here. So this is just my impressions with the eye test. I thought defensively, this was one of Araujo's worst games of the season. He was dribbled past twice in the first half, which again, for a normal defender, sure, but for him to be dribbled past twice is like a surprise. I was like, oh, Koundé's covering for Araujo today.
Who dribbled past him? Because that was impossible for me to make out.
I think Fekir got him once, and then there was, I think Canales got him once as well on the left side. I think they both got him once, but that was the first half, and yeah,
it's still Fekir and Canales.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but again, I'm not worried about it. I'm not saying like, oh, Araujo's lost it, but I'm saying is that for today, Koundé was kind of picking up the slack defensively in the first half, and I thought he was the better defender of the two, and then he does that. That said, I do want to switch the narrative just a little bit. Kind of we'll finish this conversation about Real Betis and Barça, and then we're out of here. About the back line again, because if not for the own goal, that's another clean sheet. So almost getting rid of that terrible mistake. This core again probably earned a clean sheet if not for the own goal. And I thought Araujo's, and one of the reasons why they did that, and one of the reasons I think Barcelona, as poor as they were in the first half, attacking wise, they controlled this match from start to finish, was because the high line that they play, that high line is possible. We see it when Eric Garcia is inserted with his ball breaking abilities. But I think Araujo, when we talk about the baby steps that we're watching in Balde, Araujo's passing is getting better. I don't have the numbers. I'll have to go through and look at his percentages and look at the numbers. But I also think the game to game kind of dictates how many passes you need from him, how many long balls you need from him, and those kind of things. It depends on if it's a mid block or low block, whatever. So it's really hard to compare just the numbers. You kind of have to watch the game and say, hey, what passes was he supposed to make and what passes did he make? And today I thought the passes he was supposed to make, he made all of those and more. And it just seemed like he's getting more and more comfortable on the ball. I think, again, Koundé being there with him, if he's not comfortable with the ball, he passes it to Koundé and Koundé makes the pass himself. And if he is comfortable and goes for it, then he goes for it. And so in the month of January in particular, I was really impressed with his long balls, his diagonal balls. He doesn't have many. He'll give you like one or two a match. But as he gets more and more comfortable, I'm really excited to see on the ball how Araujo is making those changes. And we kind of already said it, where when he was 21 and 22, he said, is he going to, is he always just going to be less than stellar or not as good? Or is he just going to be Puyol forever on the ball, whatever? But it seems like he is improving in that aspect of his game.
Wait. Puyol was good.
I know he was. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking
don't make me like hang up on you.
I know Puyol was good on the ball. I'm not speaking. I'm speaking for the perception of Puyol on the ball. But for Araujo to make those improvements little by little, that allows Barcelona, again, tactically, to be comfortable playing that higher line and trusting that Araujo doesn't have to pass back to Ter Stegen. Because that's also the other thing that I want to look at too. The Ter Stegen to Araujo direct passes were a lot less today because Araujo was more confident to then have the ball recycled back to him and then either push forward or continue to recycle the ball himself and not have to reset. Because Betis, and you're going to see this against top competition, if you will, these teams that are really good at pressing, we're going to see it against Manchester United. The teams that are really good at pressing are going to force the ball back to Ter Stegen. But if Araujo is comfortable on the ball and can dribble himself out of trouble, even to retain the ball, and doesn't have to go all the way back to Ter Stegen, they can recycle possession much higher up the field, and that's just going to put them on the front foot and allow them to control games better. As I said, those small little things is what I'm excited about with Araujo.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, how much of it is Araujo, and how much of it is our midfield just positioning themselves better.
Having two outlets instead of one. Because Fekir tried to man mark De Jong, and it didn't work because then Busquets was wide open, and vice versa.
Then Busquets got open, and when Busquets and De Jong get the ball, they either play a 1-2 between themselves to break the line, or they break the line immediately with a pass forward themselves, where Betis was constantly moving in between the lines. So I think the conditions favor all of the players to make the right decisions. And it's really amazing to see them see this come together. Also, Dan, we haven't even talked about this, but we're exactly at the halfway point of the league now. How many points do we have?
50. 8 ahead of Real Madrid, but they have a game in hand tomorrow. So we'll see if Valencia, as Peter Lim continues to try to destroy his team, we'll see if Valencia, what's left of it, can take some more points off Real Madrid. Because 6 points at the halfway point would be great, and that's if they get a draw. 5 points even is not even good enough. But
if they get a draw, we'd be at 7 points.
7 points, great. I'm awesome with math. That's why I do a podcast.
So 50. We're on course for a 100-point season. I'm not saying that we're going to get there. We most likely are not going to get to 100.
I mean, the only two coaches that this ever happened for was Tito Villanova and Valverde, were the only two who had 50 or more at the halfway point.
How much did Mourinho had in Madrid's 100-point season?
I don't know. I'd have to Google that. I don't know Mourinho's stats off the top of my head. I don't know. Off the top of my head.
Fair enough. But I had not realized that we were doing so well point wise. I think part of it might be that the league is a bit weaker than it used to be, but it's still very impressive. And let's see what happens. I think the Dembele injury is going to hurt us. You already saw it today. Like, there's almost no dribbling threat in the team anymore. So again, the first half I didn't see it quite clearly, but it felt to me like we just couldn't make anything happen. And when you can't make anything happen, Dembele is the kind of guy who can still make things happen.
His two-footedness, that's the difference between he and Raphinha. Like, Raphinha has the same speed, the same ability to go at a defender. He has the option of inverting and shooting a little bit more than Dembele. But
Dembele is faster, man. Even without the two-footedness,
I'll give you that.
Dembele gets into situations one-on-one where he can just like push the ball forward and and blast past his marker.
I think that's what I'm saying. I think his ability to be able to invert onto his left when he's playing on the right wing, or again go on that right wing and just with his right foot deliver a pretty good cross, like that two-footedness is just so dangerous from him. And again, his speed gets him open as well. And Raphinha, I think that was the issue in this game where if that left back can force Raphinha wide, they don't bring help. That's the difference, that they don't slide that extra center back over, because once you have Raphinha wide and you push him towards the goal line, only one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to turn him over and get the tackle, or you're going to probably commit a corner or something like that. But you don't bring the second defender, because you don't have to worry about that if he doesn't initially get inward in like the first, basically as he's approaching the 18-yard box. And that's, again, structurally, it's just a huge difference between he and Dembele.
Yeah. Yep. I think Balde will get a lot of games during this stretch as well, because on the left they're pretty much always going to play inverted, so you need that width, and since we don't have a lot of dribbling on the team right now, you want Balde there, because he can break lines off the dribble, and he has that speed.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So I think that I think puts a good bow on it as we made this little Balde sandwich. Balde at the beginning, Balde at the end. We're not putting too much on the 19-year-old to figure out the next month, but certainly the ideas are in place. Again, it was a good match. I think that Barcelona made history today. The first time they have won 4 consecutive La Liga matches by a 1-goal margin. The last time they'd won 3, and they did against Girona. The last time they'd done that was 1980, so it's the first time ever 4 consecutive wins with 1-goal margin. So this team, at least on paper, that's a little, not to be too cliche, but maybe they know how to win, right? I put that air quotes around that too. Maybe they figured out how to win and they know how to suffer. And who was it? Every manager in La Liga has always said it for years, that if you can suffer, then you can win in Spain.
And also the pressure is really on Madrid right now, because if we drop points, that will give Madrid energy to go for the win tomorrow against Valencia, right? But since we didn't drop points and that gap is 8 points wide, maybe that has like a demoralizing effect.
Well, we do know Real Madrid, they like to suffer comfortably. So they're so comfortable and cavalier all the time that they do seem to suffer for the first 70 minutes, and then they figure it out for the last 20. And Barca the opposite, where they figured it out for the first 70 and they suffer for the last 20. And maybe that extra little bit of pressure on Real Madrid, is going to make it a little more difficult. Again, Valencia, they're such a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. But at least I think for Real Betis and all these Culers out there, they knew what they're going to get from the Barcelona podcast. From you, Levon, hopefully I gave you what you were expecting to be delivered. But again, follow him on Twitter down in the show notes below. Twitter and Instagram for us at the Barcelona Pod. TikTok as well. Close Facebook group, Patreon, YouTube, Discord. You know where to find us. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Forza Barça.
All right. Forza Barça. Take care, brother.